Hi, I'm Dr. Carrie Haley. I'm with Regents EMS and one of the assistant medical directors. I am here today with John Martinez, who is a firefighter with St. Paul Fire. So, John, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Haley.
All right, John. So, kind of digging into things. So, what made you interested in getting into EMS?
I got into a car accident when I was about 19, and my girlfriend at the time was injured. So an ambulance came, and I was talking to the driver about how he liked it, and I didn't know what I was doing with my life, and it appealed to me, and I did precast concrete for a little bit, and I enjoyed the work. I enjoy manual labor, and being a firefighter, obviously there's a lot of manual labor, and then you're also serving people, so hopefully making a difference in somebody's life, and that was appealing to me.
Nice. Did you grow up in the area, or were you in like the Minnesota or St. Paul area?
My parents were in the Army, so I moved around growing up. I have spent most of my life in Minnesota, but up until I was about 9, we moved around every couple of years. I grew up in St. Louis Park, Brooklyn Center area. I lived in St. Paul on my own for a few years, but that was about it before working in St. Paul.
Nice. And then you were also a part of the Pathway program. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience with doing that program?
Yes. So I was doing the concrete construction, and I went out with a friend and his wife, and she had gone through the program, and I was thinking about doing the concrete for a little bit longer, but I'm looking for something else. And she told me she went through it and enjoyed it. And I actually went through the pre-academy. I don't think they really do that anymore, but it's kind of like an intro for a few weeks. And I enjoyed it. So I went through the program itself, and it's a great program. You're getting paid to learn, and I mean, it really, if that's something that you want to do, there's a few opportunities like that for any line of work. And yeah, it was great. Really good foot in the door and good foundation to the start of this career.
Sure. Did you do anything before joining St. Paul Fire then after the academy, or did you kind of go straight into doing the fire academy stuff?
I did 2 years at Alina working BLS, and then I worked at Station 51 doing BLS as well.
Okay. Can you, now that you've kind of maybe done a little bit, it sounds like with Alina or a more hospital-based, that it's not necessarily a municipal St. Paul Fire type environment. Do you feel, looking back, that you had there's any ways that people treated you differently, or that within the field of EMS you felt less included? Because I am making a big leap here in that there's not a lot of Black medics or EMTs over necessarily with some of the smaller suburban services.
I would say I notice it now more than I ever have, and I don't say that to say that that's a good or a bad thing. I notice it more. I think it's more in your face this year with everything that's gone on in the world. When I started out, it's kind of hard. I didn't look at it that way. I moved around a lot. I went to private school in elementary, which was mostly white kids, which even then I didn't notice it. For me, it was just because I had to move around so much. So I'm constantly having to make new friends. So I'm shy. I'm engaging my environment. So I think that's built into my personality just based on my childhood. So I didn't look at it as more of a, like, oh, I'm the only person of color in the room. It was more of a, this is a new career field. These people have been doing it for a while. I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in a uniform. I remember that, like my first experience wearing a uniform, it's like people start to notice you, and you're in an ambulance, people are watching you. So it was more so like a new environment versus, oh, I'm the only person of color in the room. I didn't see it that way when I started out.
You're kind of talking about you moved around a lot as a kid, especially, being involved with your parents with the military. Did you now looking back, now that you are an adult and you're starting to really think more about being a person of color, having the diversity that is out there, do you think looking back that you may have experienced any prejudices or biases that you just didn't absorb as a child or acknowledge as a child?
Probably. Not so much from kids. It was probably more so from like parents and teachers, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back, it's not like I didn't notice it then. And looking back, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing really stood out to me. There was an incident when I was younger. I had a friend who was a neighbor, and he was white, and we hung out all the time. Mm-hmm. This was when I was like 10 years old. Hung out all the time, and his grandfather was there one day. I remember we were like playing tag or something, and I think there was a few other neighborhood kids that we were all just playing, and his grandfather, I can't remember. All I remember is that he came up to me and like flipped me, and like I hit the ground on my back, and then he just walked away. And looking back now as an adult, I would never put my hands on somebody else's kid. Mm-hmm. And then if they were to fall, just walk away. That's really strange. So maybe I have no idea what that was about.
Yeah.
But maybe something like that. Maybe something was going on. But other than that, no. There's nothing that really stands out to me that was in my face.
And I mean, I think that's really a good thing too. Because especially as a kid, that you weren't necessarily, even if things were happening, you weren't being affected by that. And I think that's a positive thing. Thinking about the now, so I think
something comes to mind when you said that.
Yeah.
So I watched a video yesterday. It was these kids watching like Disney movies and their parents watching the same thing. And there's these subliminal stuff in there. I'm sure you've seen it, where they throw in jokes for their adults. Mm-hmm. And they had the kids' reactions, and they'd have the kids try to explain what they think they meant by that. And it's funny listening to their interpretation of what happened versus the adults obviously knowing what's going on.
Yep.
And so I think that's just part of being a kid. You try to rationalize things,
mm-hmm.
The best that you can. And that's the value of being a kid.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you wish you could still maintain that, childhood innocence mentality, and instead of being hit with the real world and all the things that are happening. I think, speaking of which, when we had our initial meeting with everybody kind of around the room and stuff, and you were able to share that, this was different for you, in particular with the George Floyd murder, mm-hmm. especially because, it hit home for you, mm-hmm. and really has kind of been your point of, yes, something is wrong, I want to help make change. Do you feel that anything has been leading up in your adult life to that point? You started to observe more things or hear more things? Or was it really truly like, this is now like, this was so close to home, and I really, now this is like, that was like your huge like spark moment, your the light bulb?
That's a good question. I probably noticed it a little more just because, I work with people for 24 hours at a time, mm-hmm. so you get to know people. And there's been nothing that's like right in my face. I've heard other people's stories, other people's point of views, which I agree or disagree with, but it's always been cordial, mm-hmm. Which there's a lot of value in that, just being able to have a conversation and disagreeing with. And I hope we can still keep doing that. But I think that was kind of a pivotal moment. It's not really changing so much what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I went and walked one day, and it wasn't necessarily a protest. It's more just a march.
Yeah.
Which, I'd do that again. That was a good event. But I'm not really doing a whole lot different. It's just I'm more aware, I guess.
Sure.
I take responsibility. I have to be responsible for myself. There's this nonprofit group, and I'm sorry I keep grabbing my mask.
Oh, no, it's okay.
There's a nonprofit group, Change Starts With Me. They're doing great things for the communities. I got to volunteer with them one day, but their, Change Starts With Me is exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go and change everything that's going on, but in my direct interactions with people, I can be an example of what I am
Mm-hmm.
and what I believe, and with respect to any disagreement or agreement that somebody might have. But that's a goal of mine every day, and I fall short of that, of course, but I realize that I could drive myself crazy, and I think a lot of people do if they're looking at the grand picture of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad, some of the things that are going on, but change, if I want to do something different, it starts in my everyday interactions and being an example of what I am and who I am.
Do you feel that too within the department and everything, and now that we've done a couple videos that have been out and the conversation maybe has been sparked, do you feel like you're getting more feedback from colleagues, or more conversations that have been started to be had at the dinner table about the African American population in St. Paul that you serve, or the Hmong population that you serve, or the Somali population that you serve, because there's been now more acknowledgement of it, and that we need to be more intentional about how we talk and interact with others?
Yeah. So I'm bid in at my station, so we know each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we're able to have those conversations. We know when to have those conversations and when not to. Being in the pool, it might be a different story. And I don't know, because I've been bid in for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think we'd still be able to have those conversations. Where I'm at, we know each other, so we're able to have those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's kind of been brought up a couple of times, both like Brittany and Abdi. We've been talking about how it's really important that you have that trust in that relationship before kind of moving forward with having that type of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts or recommendations about how we can start forming those relationships so we're able to have those conversations? Because I think that's one of the big barriers I'm seeing as a theme as we've been talking here, of that people just don't have that caring, intimate connection, or that trusting connection where they feel safe to be able to have these conversations.
Yeah. So we had equity training a few years ago. I would say 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was just equity training for the city and the department, mm-hmm. and it didn't go well. I think there were good intentions. I would like to believe there's good intentions, but it wasn't received well. Obviously, a majority of our department is white, mm-hmm. white males, and the start of that and how I felt was that if you're not of color, you're not a minority, you can't speak on this. And then it's kind of being forced on people. And when things are being forced on people, I wouldn't like that personally. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that was received well, and I don't think it was set up well. And that's just my personal opinion. I think if you were to have something like that where it was a little bit more open, I think that could be productive, as long as everybody's respectful. I watched a bit of the presidential debate. That's no way to have a debate. People are interrupting each other. They're mm-hmm. calling each other names. There's no way. That's unproductive. But being able to share your opinions, ask questions, give testimonies, experiences, there's a lot of value in that. I think that's everything. I think that's how change happens. I think that's how you open people's eyes to different perspectives, being able to talk about it and hear one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to that point, kind of thinking too, like say with George Floyd, you didn't maybe necessarily have that more personal effect do you think that these are some of the strategies? Like, where do you think you'd be now in terms of your journey for advocacy for diversity and inclusion? And do you think that these kind of things that you're talking about, like having these connections, having the more open conversations, having that building that trust, do you think that would be something that you would have taken internally and be like, yeah, we should do this?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say because I think it was such a big moment for everyone that it's hard not to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. So I joined the equity change team before all this happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been on the equity change team. The reason that was important to me was because for me that means that those that don't feel like their voice is being heard, that their voice is being heard, and advocating for that. I haven't personally done a lot for that group, but that's something important to me. So I haven't done a lot different this year since George Floyd, but it's just been an experience that has made me more aware, and it just gives an opportunity to talk about it. So I don't know that I'd be doing much different things if that hadn't happened, or given an opportunity, it'd probably be about the same.
Sure. No, I think that makes sense. But and I think a lot of us it's been like that reflective time after it happened. We all want to do things, we want to see, especially, like fire emergency kind of mindset, like we just want things to happen. We want things to get done. But I think that it's been really good and important for people to sit and think a little bit more. Maybe some people aren't thinking as much or not thinking in the correct mindset necessarily, but having at least the opportunity to do so. And I think having these types of conversations is a good starting point for people.
Right. I've had a few people ask me, like, what can they do to help?
Mm-hmm.
So they're asking me as a person of color, this individual's white, they're asking me, what can I do to help? And, I think it's whatever you feel compelled to do. Like, what do you feel moved to do, if anything? In the individual, I've never felt any tension or anything, for others. It's all the same. It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
We've had conversations, but I feel like some people have felt like they have to do something to show that they're not racist or prejudiced, when I never saw them as being so before. And I don't speak for everybody. I only speak for myself.
For sure.
So I don't think that's a healthy thing either. I think that we can only do so much. I think that that's important for people to remember. So that's just one interaction that I can think of that, I just said, like, what do you feel moved to do?
Mm-hmm.
Can't knock you for not doing something or doing too much. It's all about what do you feel moved to do.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really important piece of things too, because I was reading something on, some social media platform, but I thought it was a good point saying, like, you can't, if you don't feel like marching, don't march. And if you don't feel like speaking up, don't speak up. But if you feel like doing those things, do it. If you feel compelled to lead it. But and no one should be giving people a hard time about what they're choosing to do or not to do. It's about the fact that people are thinking about it, that they're making those conscious decisions to choose to do something or not, and that it's more about the fact that it's a conversation that we're starting to have and to continue to move some direction within our country for it. So I think that's a really good point, because I don't think people should feel bad if they're choosing not to do a lot of active things, but they're reading, they're talking to their friends, they're asking the questions, because that's more than maybe what they were doing a year ago.
Right.
Do you feel now that, not that we're a couple now, half a year almost removed from George Floyd, do you feel that we're still having good momentum, that we're still doing things in moving in a direction towards inclusion and equity within our communities?
As far as just like how we interact or like
Yeah, like how we interact, or how, you know, our organizations or our city is trying to make things, to come up with solutions to problems, or to keep talking about solutions to problems.
Yeah, that's from what I've seen, as far as numbers and what's being done, you know, statistically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know too much in that
Yeah.
area. Just in my interactions with patients and, you know, hospitals and my family life, and I think there's some people that are fearful and they're feeling tension maybe, and I think there's some people that are making an active effort to embrace, you know, and cast that fear out and just, you know, show people love, show each other love.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can really speak on. I think it's hard for people to stay in the middle right now. It's like there's more division. You're either trying to bridge that gap or you're to yourself, and it's either one or the other. That from what I've seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, like we all have our own experiences and the people that we interact with. One thing that I've been trying to think of too is, you know, because we're both, you know, you provide a service to St. Paul, so you are a firefighter, you are trained in some medical, you know, knowledge and knowing how to take care of people when they're at maybe having the worst day of their life, their emergency. How do you think all of this ties in together in terms of how we're thinking about each other and treating each other? And have you seen any changes in how we're approaching different members of our community?
So, as you're asking me that, I have an example in my head. We had a patient, a child, who was hurt pretty bad, and her mother was there, and we brought them to the hospital. And as we were loading them up into the ambulance, my partner and I were talking, oh, should we give her fentanyl or something? The moment she heard that, she's like, no, you're not giving my baby fentanyl, you know. And I said, no, man, we're not going to do anything without talking to you first. We're just bouncing ideas off each other. That's how we work. We're checking each other. And I explained that to her very respectfully and tried to put her at ease and build some trust, because she was already, you could tell.
Yeah.
In the Black community, there is a fear of EMS and hospitals. You know, there is that, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that, but that is prevalent. That is a thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to build trust there and say we're not doing anything without talking to you first. You are her mom. We're going to respect that. We get to the hospital and the doctor, you know, she's in tears. Her child is hurt, and I don't think, this is my opinion, it just seemed like in the room, I don't think the nurses, obviously they're just getting this patient, they don't know what's going on, but it also didn't seem like they took a moment to really gauge where mom is at. Obviously, child's in tears and being a kid, but they didn't really take a moment to bridge the gap and build trust there, which is it's important, you know, especially when it's a serious, when the patient's in serious condition, or, you know. I heard the doctor, as we're leaving, talk about giving the child fentanyl, and same thing. No, she starts screaming, she's crying, and this is a woman of color, and I felt in here, you know, I felt for her. You know, her child happened to be the same age as our daughter, and we left, and I turned around and went back, and I went back in the room, and I said, excuse me, and I said, hey, if this was my daughter, I would want her to get it, just so you know. I just felt Like, you needed to hear that. If this was my daughter, I would want her to get it. She's in a lot of pain. And I also said I would trust the doctor here. And one of the nurses thanked me on the way out. And I still felt moved because I could just see how she was feeling. And again, I don't agree or disagree, but she just needed, I felt moved to make sure she felt trust, like she felt safe. So I went and I looked for just another female of color. And I went and pulled her aside and I said, hey, we just brought this patient in this room. And she's not even a medical. I think she does data or something. I said, hey, she just needs to hear from somebody to be comforted. She's got to be strong for her kid. And can you just make sure she's good? So, I think sometimes, especially as medical professionals, we need to, and myself especially, I've had to check myself. If you catch a run at 2 or 3 in the morning for somebody not being able to go to sleep or something like that.
Yes.
It's hard to slow down and see where people are at in their life. But that's a particular example that comes to mind. And I think just slowing down and being able to do that. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think it really does. I mean, I think that it's like I really like, the theme of the changing, beginning with the single person, the single interaction. So what can we do just on our day-to-day? And I think it's really easy for us in, emergency service, EMS and emergency medicine, that to get jaded, to get, to have that visceral response to that 3 a.m. call or that 3 a.m. patient, or even that, chronic patient. And it's really easy to get pulled into that, like, oh, visceral, like, oh my goodness, reaction. But then in trying to flip it, I think is really a really good recommendation and a thought that we should all try to do, and be like, okay, they're calling for a reason. It may not be a reason I would have called for, but something in their life just made them decide that it was important enough that they needed to call 911 or they needed to come to the emergency department for. And it's not our place necessarily to judge whether or not that, but because that's what they felt. That's how they felt at the time, and then we're there to help them move through the process of the healthcare encounter, however it may be. So I think that's really important. I think, one thing that I thought as well, as far as you guys, being out in the field, you are going into people's homes, you are seeing where they live, and you're really, truly a lot of people's first encounters with the healthcare system. So not everyone is able to go to clinic. You know that probably from seeing patients. Not everyone has an established primary doctor that they go see. So that when that one thing comes up that's abnormal in their health, you're literally the first person that they encounter. What kind of responsibility do you feel that EMS has to making sure that they can provide good, equitable care to across the populations, because the fact that you really are the first people that they may interact with healthcare, and maybe can sway how they perceive healthcare in general for the rest of their lives?
I think part of that is, if we consider the emergency, quote unquote, to be legitimate, or maybe not so much. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I think that does. It's really easy to help somebody when they're obviously in help. That makes it really easy. But when it's not, just taking the time to educate them, say, hey, this might be going on, as long as everything's clear. And they're asking us, like, genuinely, like, hey, I don't know what to do, this is going on, and then giving them a steer. I think that makes it pretty easy. And when there's a fear, which we've had, just asking, okay, where's that coming from? Why is that? Oh, they've had this experience at this hospital, or this ambulance crew, or, just trying to, I'm sorry that happened. If this was my family member, I would want them to go there, or hopefully we can fix that or change your opinion. I think that's pretty easy. It makes it difficult when the person we're going to see, the patient, is, maybe being aggressive towards us, or just inquiring, where's that coming from? What's the deal? What's the problem? How can we work with each other here? We're here to help you.
Yeah.
Just explaining that and asking them how they're feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is a two-way street sometimes, like we are technically there to help provide care. We're, the more knowledgeable ones about health care in general. But, just as much as the patient needs to feel trust from us, we also have to feel some trust from the patient as well. So that, I think it just comes down to boils down to, we need to trust each other and be able to talk to each other as humans, and be able to move forward from that. And I think I feel like that's the big barrier right now. And
yeah. I think the media, again, this is all my opinion, like, we don't watch the news at home. We've been turning it off at the station too. It's just not positive. And I think social media too is a cause of that. We watched a documentary at home, my wife and I did, about social media and the effects it's having on our culture. And people, it seems like from what we're seeing, people just buy into it instead of just being able to have a conversation. If you're voting for so-and-so, you're automatically labeled this. If you feel this way about certain laws being passed, you're automatically labeled with something else. Instead of having a conversation on why do you feel that way, you're getting called names. It's pretty basic. You go to elementary level, you tell kids name calling isn't nice. Explain why you're feeling this way and have a conversation. Oh, Jimmy hurt Sarah. Why did you do that? That's not okay. It's just having a conversation instead of calling each other names because something happened or they said something. And that's really important, what we're doing now, just having a conversation.
Yeah.
It's invaluable. That's part of being human.
And I think that's the big piece that I feel like a lot of us have been missing, and where we can just brew our own little biases or brew our own little thoughts, and then we have our own little, I think they call them echo chambers, you can talk to your own little people who are thinking the same way as you, but then maybe just step outside your box.
Yes.
Have a genuine conversation, not just you're there to listen, you're there to learn from each other, and keep an open mind. And I don't know where that got lost, but it apparently I think has gotten lost a little bit.
In some places, I still think that there's people that are making a point to, and I appreciate those individuals, whether I agree or disagree with their stance on things, just to be able to sit down. There's a YouTube channel that I watch, Steven Crowder. He has a table set up and it says, I feel this way, change my mind. And he invites people to come and have a conversation. And when people have been able to sit down and just talk to him in disagreement, but talk, it's really educational. You learn from both himself and the person that's sitting there. And you're hearing why people come from where they're coming from and why they view, and you're getting that perspective. And then you also have people that they don't even like him being there. They don't even like seeing that statement. The moment you oppose their opinion, it's get them out of here. And that's not what this country's about. And I'm glad that we still have people that are providing the table to come to and have disagreements cordially.
Yep. I think that's the when we in high school, people used to have debate teams, right? Where you would actually have to come up with opposing viewpoints and talk about them and debate them in real time. And it's not about necessarily who's better or who's worse. It's about who can present a good argument and learning from each other then. And people can't do that when they're typing necessarily. It's way too easy to just devolve into the name calling or the biases. And I think that having these type of one-on-ones or like our round table that we're able to have to just get everybody's experiences and opinions on the table, and then walking away maybe, or taking the time to reflect afterwards to think about what other people had to say, and maybe trying to come up, then working together, like what's a common theme that we can work for,
Right.
or do together to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's my hope for a lot of what we've been doing here. With your participation, do you have any hopes or thoughts that you're hoping to really get from it, or to bring to the table yourself?
I hope I get asked about it. I hope people ask me why I said something.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope people start asking questions. That's my hope. I hope people have more conversations like this. That's really my hope.
No, I mean, I think that's a great hope to have, because that means that at least you're moving beyond the name calling or the biases, that you're moving towards conversations and learning from each other. And that's part of being equal too, is we're treating each other with respect, and we're learning from each other.
I think there's a lot of people that are afraid to even have the conversation because they might get called a name if they feel or think some kind of way. And that's, I hope we can break that. Because being genuine, somebody may feel genuine about something. They may feel that they're genuinely right, and it may be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It may be, just plain wrong. But if that gets put out there and they're being authentic, and two people are able to have a conversation, maybe they feel something about another color of people or something, that, whatever it is, just being able to put that out there and being able to have a conversation about how that affects another person, or how they're just wrong or misinformed, or there's a misunderstanding. And being like, just both people being able to hear each other, I think they would both walk away with something. If the goal is to find understanding,
Mm-hmm.
it's, again, just having conversations is what's important. Just being able to do that.
No, absolutely. I think it's a great springboard for a lot of then the people who want to take the action, for the people who want to do more of the conversations, to have those open the door to more conversations, or people who are more interested in policy. And so I just think it's a good springboard where people can take ideas from each other, taking learning bits from each other, and then do what they feel comfortable doing with that. I think that that's really important for us. And I think that's a good thing that I'm hopeful that people are taking from us having this conversation, or us participating in the kind of the round table stuff where more people are getting their opinions together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, John, I don't know, do you have any other closing thoughts or remarks that you're hoping to put out there at all? Otherwise, I mean, I really appreciate your time today, and I really appreciate our conversation here today.
Yeah, I'm grateful. Thank you for setting this up, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.